Ironically, no mascot for this video. So in honor of my channel's 2nd anniversary, we are going to do a prequel story to an older video named Just Don't. For those of you who are not aware, Just Don't is a story that makes the DM who tried to recreate Goblin Slayer look tame. Just Don't was after Banjo the DM, who translates adult manga for a living, had toned things down after many complaints. This story is from before he restrained himself. So let's just throw this whole story onto the fire. For this story, there are two main characters. Crinks, who was unfortunate enough that Banjo seemed to either have it in for or an eye for. Crinks was a goblin rogue who had the misfortune of having a large nose. He ended up trying to off himself more times than he could count, and I don't blame him. This story comes from my friend Milk. He played Oreo, the other victim of this campaign. So they had just entered a new dimension after defeating a dragon, and little did Crinks know, he was in danger. Crinks' misfortune was using a Warcraft goblin as his profile pic, because as they entered this new dimension, they learned that the nose was highly desired in this dimension. Every single woman in this dimension flirted with Crinks until finally they slipped him something and had their way with him, but not in the way that you'd expect. They only used his nose. Crinks and Oreo got out of town after that, though eventually they found another. At that point, it was apparent that this was a dimensional trait, and that they had built monuments to the Nose God. The entire town, after saving them from monsters, rose up and all gave themselves forcibly to Crinks in their nostril-themed hot spring. The further they went in this dimension, the more people they met that had forcibly played with Crinks. Now, they had dimensional spells as they were all level 20-ish characters, but they were not allowed to leave the dimension. Their spells didn't work. Crinks would literally try to end himself in various ways, be it drinking literal bleach or jumping off cliffs into the infinite abyss that was just described. Banjo would not let him though. Every time he tried, he'd just laugh it off and went on, questioning why he'd even do such a thing. Eventually, they were close to being out of the dimension, and at this point, Crinks had received visions from the Nose God. It literally possessed his nose and claimed him as its champion. Its divine image? A big nose. As they descended down into a dungeon that was way out of there, Milk's character, Mate, an android who was reincarnated by Banjo as a Colossus Sphinx, was obliterated by space whales, which possessed Flurry of Whales and had such insane reach that no one in the party could move. So when Mate did, Mate just got deleted. Next session, Milk's third ever character was introduced, a female minotaur essentially. So how was his character introduced, you might ask? Maybe they run into her in the dungeon? Nope. She is sneezed in her entirety out of Crinks' nose. In her confusion, she is then enslaved by the Nose God, and a magic tether comes from Crinks' nose, basically making her see Crinks as her lover. The party at this time moves on to find a dimensional portal, to which they cast an anti-magic field on it to shut it down as a space whale begins to try coming out of it. It somehow breaks the entire dimension. They are then cast into a dimension where they are smaller than bugs. Ants are colossal to them. DM tells them that if anything steps on you, insta-death. Eventually, we find a satyr who was apparently trapped just like us. We all take some time to recuperate in his underground home. Except, of course, Milk's character, who is so in love with Crinks from before that the GM says that she takes Crinks off to have her way with him. Milk was allowed no say in this, and Crinks is told that Oreo, Milk's character that was black and white haired and stuff, overpowers Crinks even if he resists. So that happens. Moving on, there's a few more moments that happen in this dimension, such as ninja owls that auto-delete anyone they attack unaware instantly with no save. They also can move so fast due to their size that there was no way to detect them. The only reason Oreo survives is because Banjo realizes that everyone's complaining and comes up with some Deus Ex Machina power to save her. They then descend into an ant hive where they are told that they could escape this dimension and get away from the owls. There was also a vampire squirrel, but that's a whole nother story. They end up successfully taking down the Ant Queen, where Oreo is possessed by the same Deus Ex Machina power again, but this time becomes an enemy. She gets incapacitated quickly, luckily enough, and they get their loot and make their way out. Typical loot is found, big diamond, hoard of gold, etc. But there was one strange magical item, a set of armor with udders. Figuring it was a gag meant for Oreo, she puts the armor on. She is then told that she collapses, to which she sees a giant cow in a field of grass. It was a giant cow that possessed this armor. So thing is that apparently the udders can give milk if drank from directly. This special milk gave a massive boost to all stats: strength, con, natural armor, etc. But every time it's drank from, Oreo enjoys the feeling a bit too much from it that she has to make a worsening will save each time it's drank from, or she becomes brain dead. So yeah, no one made use of it except that one guy who thought it would be funny to drink from it since Oreo couldn't react because of it feeling too good. They did escape the dimension though after that. The party succeeds in defeating the big bad evil guy, and a time skip is said to occur. Oreo discovers that she is some sort of descendant from a god, is pronounced queen, and during the time skip marries Crinks and he becomes king. A few years go by. Apparently Oreo and Crinks have half goblin, half minotaur children that are age 8 and 3. So great, Milk has kids and they're from an unwilling relationship between two PCs. Well, Milk decides to roleplay as mother and queen now, so he'll embrace it. Immediately, they are told that they would be having dinner with a rival nation for an attempt at peace talks. Crinks, as a rogue, realizes the drinks are poisoned with parasites that are incurable. So he downs both his and Oreo's glass, which finally gives him the sweet embrace of death. Chaos ensues. Eventually, there's a war meeting. Being into strategy as a player, always wanting to get that general character one day, Milk attempted to, as queen, suggest how they could guard the borders, evacuate certain towns, etc. Oreo is told her suggestions are helpful, but after a successful sense motive, the man is just ignoring her, because she's female. Eventually, it leads to the point where an assassin breaks in and poisons the palace, making people become frenzied monsters. The eldest child is infected, and has to be slain. As the party flees the castle, Oreo clutches her youngest child in her arms. She is ambushed by barbarians from the rival nation. Despite Milk's best efforts describing how she does her best to take every blow for the child and to cover the child from harm, the child is butchered and dies in her arms because there were 50 barbarians. So given children and then taken away in the span of 1 to 2 sessions. She ends up dueling the general and butchering the boss by herself. This is due to a side story. You see, earlier Crink's nose mated with a maggot queen where maggots entered his nose and all other bodily holes, of course. In exchange, the maggot queen gave him the axe of Minos, which was an OP weapon that was made even more OP, and Oreo got this weapon after his death. Anywho, after the duel, the party leads an assault on the rival nation, and they meet the new big bad evil guy. Well, only his voice. They end up calling him Palpatine as a joke due to his voice and cloaked appearance. They continue on and discovered that the only way to defeat this guy is to power up the OP axe even more, to which they venture into a dungeon. With no more Crinks, Banjo decides that he needs something new, so he forcibly marries Oreo to a genie with no escape. Then he has her taken advantage of by a frogman with a tongue which is covered in saliva that is a strong aphrodisiac. It's so strong that she can't even break the grapple. The party watches on, absolutely terrified out of character because they fear the same thing will happen to them if they interfere. After making her finish many times over, Banjo thinks this is completely fine since there was no actual insertion or anything, because it's not really forcibly having your way with her at all. So the party ends up killing the frogman. They manage to get the item needed and petition a powerful crafter to reforge the weapon. It ends up, well, stupid. The world is basically destroyed as the weapon is reforged, because the entire world suffers earthquakes from it. The party is now hated because somehow everyone knows it's the party's fault. Regardless, they continue on to defeat one of the 4 generals of this wannabe demon lord, who, looking back, was obviously a manga ripoff. He did that a lot. Bad manga was his inspirations. Anywho, they defeat him in the end and feed a town with some spells. The town was starving and eating each other, so the party thinks that the least they can do is give them food and water. They are the good guys, right? Despite asking for perception checks, Milk's character is taken away without anyone noticing, in plain view, poisoned from some milk, without any checks allowed. The party tracks Oreo down, unable to catch up, until they find her at a packed slave market. Since they weren't going to attack like 100+ people, especially in a Banjo game, they tried their best to solve things peacefully by trying to buy Oreo back, who has since been branded. But she is bought by the new big bad evil guy. Then the party tracks her down to the bathroom, where she is being forced to pleasure him. Because of slave magic, she is willingly doing it. The party seemingly kills him, but not really. At this point, Milk is pretty upset, but they move on to Crink's new character and another guy crashing in with the FBI to stop the slave operation. Then, somehow, there were positive energy undead which could heal the party to death, to which Banjo didn't want a party wipe, so he sends in who else but enlarged Barack Obama to take out all the undead. At some point, he realizes he messed up and said it was all a dream. Except the part where Oreo was pleasuring the big bad evil guy. That part was real. That was luckily the end of the harassment for Oreo, and the big bad evil guy was later revealed to be who else but Teemo. Yes, Teemo from League of Legends, with a blowpipe mythical weapon. Seriously? Oreo later died due to some other craziness. The party tried to build their own island kingdom, and they ended up getting a magical boot. The group put earth and stuff in it, and then decided to put magical weapons, like a cannon gun, in it to get some defenses. For some reason, they got caught up and decided if they put their blood in it, then it will be bound to them. But instead, a dark god of meta power leveling was born, because final big bad evil guy. The party betrayed Oreo after that, and then everyone got sucked into an axe except one person. Banjo later played her as a stupid girl with a thick masculine voice. Anywho, that is the story of the prison escape as told to me by Milk. As a wise man once said, "We had no other options at the time, and we really didn't know. We just assumed this is what people did in tabletop RPGs. Looking back, I wish I drank bleach." Crink's player. So that was a lot to process. I'm just gonna say, no D&D is better than bad D&D, and this is my proof. What do you all think about this situation? And if you listened past this point, I just want to say that I really appreciate you listening to me read these stories over the years. If you have a favorite story of mine, please let me know in the comments below, and I'll try to find more stories like it, because I want to do stories that are interesting for everyone. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.